Hello and welcome to Volleyball State, a look at the sport of volleyball in 6 rotations, a proud part of the I-80 Club. I'm Jeff Sheldon.
I'm Lincoln Arneal.
Hey, this week's show, a special bonus episode available only to our Volleyball State subscribers. Those of you who are hearing this on the free feeds are going to hear the first couple minutes of it, but we would encourage, recommend, maybe beg and plead for you to become a Volleyball State subscriber because you're going to get great bonus content like this. You can do that for just $5 a month at patreon.com/I80club. For those of you who are subscribers who are going to get to listen to this full thing, thank you so much for supporting the show and our volleyball community. But because of you, we get to do not only the content that we want as an independent show, we get editorial control over the show, which was very important to us, but we also get to cover the stuff that you, our subscribers, want. And what we have heard from a lot of our subscribers is that you want a question and answer episode. You want a volleyball 101 episode. You have some questions about the club volleyball scene. And we've got coming up today exactly what the doctor ordered, Lincoln. We found one of the best people in the state of Nebraska that we could have talked to about this, VCNebraska Director Maggie Griffin.
Yeah, Maggie's been former Husker player, won a national title. But she runs VCNebraska, has been doing that for, I think, 14 years, I think. In 2011 is when she founded that. So really great interview with Maggie. We talk a little bit about recruiting. We talk a lot about just what it's like to be in the club, how club teams work, and also just kind of the evolution of the sport. We have to answer some of those basics. Why is this the way it is? Or explain this terminology. So a really great interview with Maggie coming up. So just part of what we got coming up in July. And before you know it, the beginning of the season is going to be here.
That's right. Well, and just to peel back the curtain a little bit for our listeners so you know what to expect in July. July's a little bit of a lighter time for us as the offseason comes to an end. Both Lincoln and I have vacations with our families coming up in July. I've got another work thing that takes me out of town for about a week in July. And so we're putting together some things that are going to be pre-recorded and hopefully evergreen so that there's still good content for you all in July, especially for you subscribers who are paying your hard-earned money to support this community. So we're going to put that together and make sure you still get some great stuff like this in July. Another thing coming up in July is we're going to be doing some conference previews. We'll have our Big Ten preview. We'll be looking at some of the other conferences. We got a really special interview coming up as part of that with a Division I coach that's going to be part of our conference previews in July. And all of that stuff and so much more is available for just $5 a month at patreon.com/I80club. We're super grateful for those of you who already have subscribed. Apparently, Lincoln, the I-80 Club expanded more in June than any other month ever. So, we have people jumping on board, whether you like the Groin Kick Chronicles, whether you like all of the great stuff that Jack and Josh do with the coffee shows and the Wednesday night lives. It's a growing community that we're really excited to be part of.
Yeah, and the Discord community is pretty cool. We pulled a lot of the questions today from the Discord community, and that's just a bunch of Husker fans talking sports, not just Husker sports. There's some pro conversation as well too, but interact with Jeff and I are on there frequently. We can have some Q&As as well. So yeah, it's a cool community to be a part of. We encourage you now because come August, we're going to be full immersion with Husker sports.
Yeah, we're going to be doing two shows a week. I've already tried to prep my family for being an absentee father and husband in starting in August. But hey, we're doing it for you. Also, who we're doing it for, we're another great feature that we're able to bring your way during this season is we're excited to partner with our friends at Alumni Hall. They're the ultimate Husker shopping destination. They have 2 locations in Lincoln, brick and mortar stores downtown at 11th and P, and also down at South Point Pavilions. But you can also shop online anytime at alumnihall.com. And just for listeners of Volleyball State, we're going to save you 15% off of your order of Husker apparel at Alumni Hall. You mention Volleyball State in the store to get that discount, or you use the promo code Volleyball State, all one word, no spaces, when you shop online at alumnihall.com. They've got all your top brands like Adidas, Champion, Columbia, Peter Millar, New Era, Yeti, if you need some drinkware to take to your tailgate party. And they've got lots of great Nebraska volleyball gear as well, both youth sizes for your kids. I know I need to get some more stuff for my boys, but you can find that also for adults as well. Take advantage of being a Volleyball State listener and save 15% at alumnihall.com or at either of their stores, South Point or at 12th and P in downtown Lincoln. That was a lot of intros, a lot of preamble. Lincoln, I'm tired of talking. I need to take a drink.
Yeah.
Tell everyone about the great guest we have coming up today.
Let's get to our interview. We got Maggie Griffin, like we said. She's the owner and director of VCNebraska. She played in Nebraska for three of her 4 years, won a national title with the Huskers, and she was a transfer before transfers were cool. So Maggie's very well accomplished. She was an AVCA 30 under 30. She was a club director of the year finalist in 2020. So she's very well regarded in the club volleyball scene. Also knows what she's talking about. We had a great chat with her. So let's get to that right now.
Maggie Griffin, owner and director of VCNebraska, and as of today, our go-to source for all club volleyball questions for the Volleyball State audience. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk volleyball.
All right. Well, we told Maggie just a little bit off air that we've got a lot of questions from the Volleyball State listening audience, our Patreon subscribers, to the I-80 Club Discord, and then obviously lots of things that Lincoln and I have tried to explain to people before, but I think probably stumbled over it just because we don't have coaching backgrounds. We have lots of amateur watching backgrounds, but it's great that we have a coach who can come on and talk a little bit about both worlds, both the club world specifically, and then the volleyball world just a little bit in general. And one of the big things that's come up lately, Maggie, is that the June 15th, not deadline, but kickoff date of the recruiting season for 2 years out, where offers can be made, just passed a couple of weeks ago. And we were able to follow that kind of on the Nebraska side. But from the club coaches side, the other side of that coin, what exactly is June 15th like? Are you relieved when it happens and you can play less of a middleman or a game of telephone and coaches can contact prospects directly, or what exactly does that date mean for you and your club?
It's definitely a stressful date. And I think not for us, I mean, a little bit for us, but more for the kids. And I think that it has become this like imaginary deadline where kids feel like, it's kind of where they're able to see, okay, who is actually interested in me? Where am I going to fall? What level am I going to fall into? And so for us, honestly, I love once it's over because then the kids can play much more freely. Whereas before that, it's the whole season, like our sophomore class, it's just, you can just tell at tournaments, it's stressful. There's college coaches, who's watching, who's actually interested, who's going to, who's going to call me, who's not going to call me. Am I going to get any calls? Am I going to, and so it's kind of created this a bunch of turmoil and anxiety in these kids' heads about this date. Whereas, when I was recruited forever ago, it was just kind of, you just started playing. And then when you were in high school, college coaches started recruiting you and you were able to go on visits, and it was a completely different time. And I feel like the stress level was much, much lower. So I feel for these kids, it's a lot.
And just to remind everyone, the age ranges we're talking about here, these are largely 16-year-old girls, or maybe 15 in some instances.
Yeah, they're going into their junior year. So majority of them have turned 16, but it's just a lot for these kids to shoulder and try to think through. And again, you just never know. These college coaches, and you can't blame them, they're casting a wide net because they don't know where kids are going to go on June 15th and where that's going to leave them. And so then you get kids who are disappointed that maybe a school that talked to them on June 15th, they were just doing their due diligence, but they're not really, they've got 4 kids ahead of them, and where are they going to fall? Are those kids going to take those offers? So it's a stressful day. And, I'm honestly glad once it's over and it's like, okay, it's over. Now people can communicate. We kind of know where everyone falls, and then we can step in and help and try to provide guidance and things like that. So we're always trying to figure out the best way to help our kids. And I don't think it's definitely the best way to go about it, but unfortunately, hopefully we can get to a point where there's a better solution for our kids, but also for the college coaches too. I have a lot of friends in college coaching, and it's really stressful for them as well, obviously.
It used to be, a free-for-all. They could contact them. We had players committing before their freshman year of high school too. Is that helped push back, or, how has that rule of waiting until after their sophomore year changed the way you work with players and the recruiting process?
Yeah, and I understand why they wanted to push it back, because I do think looking at an 8th grader or a freshman, do they really know what they want? But again, does the sophomore really know what they want? I mean, these kids they're doing the best to try to figure out what make the best decision for themselves. But I think that I think what's lacking is giving these kids an opportunity to communicate with coaches, and then have an opportunity to visit campus, go on a visit, talk to the coaches. And I think that there's so much pressure, and not from everywhere, but for a lot of kids, there's pressure to commit quickly. There's pressure from coaches. The coaches feel the pressure. And so it's just kind of this cycle that just feeds itself. And, sometimes it's for kids, it's easy. They know where they want to go. Mm-hmm. The schools know who they want. It's an easy decision. And then for other kids, they feel the pressure of, I'm seeing this kid commit and this kid commit, and I need to commit, or else I'm going to lose this opportunity. And there's just so many things, and just I think we saw a lot this year too, with certain kids in specific positions thinking that they were going to have specific offers from certain schools, and then those schools changing their minds about what position they're offering and in which class. And that leaves kids kind of on an island of like, well, what do I do now? Mm-hmm. And so there's got to be a better way that's better for the mental health of everyone involved, because it is a lot.
And we hear from everyone on all sides of this situation, whether it's college coaches or recruits or their parents, kind of like what you said, like nobody likes the current setup. And everyone keeps saying like, well, there could be a better way for this. Like if we made you the president of volleyball, Maggie, what's the way that you would want it done? What is the best way to do it that, respects everyone's timeline and doesn't ask maybe 15-year-olds and their families to be pressured into very high pressure decisions?
Mm-hmm. Here's the reality. There's going to be rules, and no matter how many rules or guidelines you have, they will be flexed, they will be bent, and some will just be flat out broken. So I think that is the hardest part, is trying to create a set of events and a set of guidelines that is hopefully people can follow to the best of their abilities, and do it in a way that's, acting with integrity and what's best for the kids. And, I think that's the thing is sometimes the kids are almost put last in this whole thing. And so I think that I agree with pushing the timeline back to when they're sophomores, so that, another thing too, is these kids they need time to just develop, like as athletes, like freshman, sophomore year, making it more about, okay, developing, getting better. And there's all this pressure right now with that timeline. So I think having it a little bit later, where kids, they're not making decisions as 13 or 14-year-olds, I think is great. But I think allowing a period of time where college coaches can communicate with athletes and athletes can go on visits, but maybe you can't put out any offers. So maybe it's a communication and a visit period where kids have the opportunity and the time. And also the thing that a lot of people aren't realizing is these kids, June 15th, kids are trying to prepare for nationals. So we had kids who are trying to prepare to go play for a national championship, but they're also doing high school basketball, high school conditioning, high school volleyball, club practices, college camps. It's like, it's an absolute, these kids don't get any time. And so having them all so early, I think allowing this opportunity or this timeline where kids can go take visits once club season is over, coaches can communicate with them, no offers can be made, then that at least allows kids to be able to go out and truly make a decision that is what's best for them. So then they have an idea of like, okay, I'm number 1 on this coach's list, or maybe I'm number 3 or 4. Whereas we're just speculating, and we're trying to help the kids see where they fall on the list and what coaches are interested and who's going to, all these things. And so I think that might be the best of all the worlds, where the communication's open and they can ask questions, visit campus, family can go, but they have a time where it's just, hey, we're just visiting, we're just chatting, there's no offers. So, and then at that point, I think then having a date for, offers can be made, then I think that hopefully would solve most of the problems.
Yeah. And there's one thing, I mean, a lot of these girls do go to camps, but a camp visit is a very different than an official visit as well, too. I mean, what advice do you give them before June 15th or during the recruiting process? I mean, how early does that recruiting education start when you're working with them?
I mean, we have all different levels of athletes. We have some kids who have no desire to play in college, and then we have kids who want to play at the highest level they possibly can. So for us to do our due diligence, we try to start educating when they're 8th grade freshmen, and for some kids, they don't need to worry about recruiting till sophomore or even junior year. And then for some kids, we're trying to educate them a little bit earlier, because the reality is, if you aren't going to college camps after your freshman year, then you are, it makes it tougher. It doesn't mean you're behind, but it just makes it a little bit tougher. And the other thing too is that college coaches are very outward about being open about like, hey, if you want us to consider you, on June 15th for a position or an offer, we expect you to be at camp. So then it's this pressure of like trying to help them figure out, okay, well, what camps do I go to? Where am I actually really interested in? And so we try to educate on the process overall and what it looks like, because it is a very lengthy process and it's really stressful. And for the 1% of kids who are, getting some of those offers on June 15th, right? Like that's not the majority. That's a very small percentage. So it's trying to help those kids navigate that, and then also help the kids who want to get a lot of phone calls and offers on June 15th, but maybe don't, right? It's trying to help them navigate like, hey, listen, this is part of the process. Be patient. It's all about finding the right fit. And we stress that repeatedly to our kids. It's easy to want to, go for the shiny, bright lights, but you want to think about what is going to make me the happiest over a 4-year period throughout my college career. The coaches, the culture, the other athletes, those are the things that we're really stressing for them to do their homework on and learn the most about through the process and making a decision. So,
Maggie, how often would you say, or how much of your time maybe is spent communicating with college coaches, whether that's on the phone or answering emails or, fielding all kinds of inquiries? How much of your time is spent doing that?
So I'm really lucky. I have a phenomenal full-time staff. And I have one other coach, Blake Rollins, who he's very passionate about this side of the game, the recruiting, and he coaches this age. So it's really easy for him to step in and be a communicator with college coaches. So I would say he handles about 75% of it. And I handle the rest. But, leading up to, for example, like with this age group, our 16s age group is a really, really strong class. So we have had a ton of communication from college coaches. And so, it's for him, he's on the phone pretty much every single day leading up to June 15th, just communicating, trying to help the kids figure out, who's interested, wants them to be at camp, what does it look like? So it for him, it is a lot more stressful for me, whereas I get to help with kind of the bigger picture stuff and educate. And, I have kids, obviously the kids will reach out and ask me questions and ask for advice and things like that. And we always try to be really honest with our athletes as well. So
is there even more communication with college coaches now that your club receives since the transfer portal became a thing? I would have to imagine there is, because you used to be, you would say goodbye to a player when they went off to start their college career, but now, a player could have 2 or 3 different stops in their college career.
Yeah, absolutely. And that gets a little murky too, because then it's, if we do have a kid that wants to transfer, then they're obviously going to rely more on us than their current college coach to help them with that kind of stuff. So I think we had 2 kids transfer this year. We had a girl go from Marquette to Michigan State, and another player who was in California who transferred to another D2 school in California. And they'll definitely reach out and help. And, that's usually a little bit easier because they've been in it. They understand, they know what questions to ask. So for us, it's more about advice and, making sure they're doing their due diligence and things like that. But the transfer portal is on 100% affecting high school student athletes, because I can't tell you how many times I've talked to college coaches that say, well, if we don't get our top 3 kids, we're just going to wait and get somebody in the portal. And it's affecting our kids and the opportunities that they're having. A kid who maybe would have gone to a higher level program is maybe taking a little bit of a step down, but it's because it's, those schools would rather go into the portal and get somebody who has 1 or 2 years of college experience than an incoming freshman. So it is really tough. And also trying to educate our kids on, there's some college coaches who are going to use the portal and some who aren't. And so it's finding, do you trust that your college coach is going to try to recruit over you if you don't reach the level that they need you to be at? Or do you feel like this coach is really committed to you and developing you? And it's hard. I see both sides, and it's really hard.
Yeah. You were once a college transfer too. Is that still relevant, or has the portal kind of changed changed the scene completely. And it's like,
oh man. Looking back, I got so much heat for transferring from Michigan State, and looking back, I'm like, people do it every day now. And like mine was, I had a coaching change. It was, the coach who recruited me was, resigned. So it's like, I look back on that and laugh so hard. But yeah, back when I transferred, I had to submit basically my release to up to 5 schools, and then they faxed my release to those 5 schools. So
yeah.
If that tells you anything about how it's changed, it's quite a bit different. So
are you still able to use that experience as someone who did kind of encounter that and open up your options and use that? Is that at least maybe not the mechanics of the transfer are quite different, but at least the pathway and kind of the experience? Are you able to use that to help them through the process?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it has become so like normalized, like, oh, if I'm not happy, I'll just transfer. And I don't think kids realize how challenging it is. Like you are completely starting over, new school. I mean, I came to the state of Nebraska and I did not know a single person. I'd never been to the state before. I didn't know a single person here. So, I mean, I lived in the dorms for another year. Like it is just to completely uproot your whole freshman year. And again, I fully believe in if you truly aren't happy, for whatever the reasons are, I get that. But I think that kids are so quick to pull the trigger. And usually I would say 9 times out of 10, it's because of playing time. And I'm very much of the belief of if you aren't happy with playing time, communicate with your coach, figure out what you could be doing better, get your butt in the gym in the off season. Like those are all things. I think it's so easy to be like, well, it's not working, I'm out. And I think there's a lot of reasons where that is okay, right? If if it is a coaching change and you feel like, hey, this coach is going to bring in their own kids and, or if it's a culture thing. But I think too often it's, well, I need to be playing. And it's like, for me, that's not a great reason to transfer. And so I think trying to explain that to them and kind of coach them through that as they're going through the process, hopefully helps to think through that. And one of the biggest things I say to our kids when they're choosing where they go is, hey, if you go to this school and you never step foot on the court, are you going to be happy? If you go to this school and God forbid you blow out your knee tomorrow, are you going to be happy at this school? And I think these are the things that kids they don't think about nearly as much because of all the other factors that are now factors that weren't factors when I was in college, obviously. So
yeah, for sure.
Well, we've got some questions, Maggie, from our listeners that we're going to kind of mix into this conversation. And the first one of these we wanted to get to is from Dave, who asked, when should a player or their parents make the jump from maybe rec league volleyball to club and to a travel team? And I don't know if to interpret that as an age range or just an ability level when that makes itself apparent. But like when's a good time for that transition?
Yeah, so I think something that for me is really important, and obviously I run a club and we're a pretty large club, but I think that there are so many different avenues of playing volleyball. So, again, you see like the top 1% of the kids that are going off to play in national tournaments and try to win a national championship and all those things. But I think that there's so many other ways. We have a regional program where kids that are just maybe making the switch from like YMCA to club volleyball, right? It's kind of club volleyball, it's maybe a step up from, doing more of like a rec league thing. But I think too often, if kids are like volleyball, and they're like, we don't think like kids should really be doing travel until they're like in 8th grade, 7th grade, sometimes if it's a top level team. Like these kids are young, they're doing so much stuff. And so, I think like letting them be kids and have fun, and like if they don't love being here, they're going to burn out really quickly. So I think sometimes parents think like, oh my gosh, it's too late, like I'm behind or whatever. And it's like, you're not behind. It's if they're loving doing it, if they want to be in the gym, if they enjoy being coached, if they like playing, there's really no wrong answer. And I think what we see is a lot of kids that will come to us in 8th grade, 9th grade, where they really start to become serious about it. Right. And they're like, okay, I see kids going off and playing in college or making varsity, and like, that's what I want to do. And so I think we see a lot of kids that come to us at those ages where they do start to become more serious. You know, and then obviously we have kids that like Nebraska is its own bubble of a world when it comes to volleyball. Like, I don't know if people realize how insulated and how different it is here.
We keep trying to tell people, and I don't know if they've listened yet, but hopefully we'll get through about it.
From every level, from high school to college to it's a completely, I grew up in Chicago, and it is not even remotely close to what it is here in Nebraska. It is the whole state revolves around volleyball, which is so cool. But with that comes some downfalls of, you know, a lot of parents thinking like, hey, this is the norm, right? And it's really not. So I don't know. I think there's not a wrong answer. I think, you know, 7th or 8th grade, we do see a lot of kids that become more serious about it, want to put more time in. And I think that's great. You know, but even then we have kids, sophomore, juniors, that start playing at a more competitive level. And that's great too. We had a kid who just graduated from South Dakota State. South Dakota State made the tournament, came to Nebraska, had a great season. Annalie Ventling Brown, and she did our regional program until she was a sophomore. Mm-hmm. And so like to see a kid like that, who was just a great athlete, you know, liked volleyball, didn't want to be super serious about it. And then, you know, did our regional program all the way through that sophomore year, and then went and played Division I volleyball. It was stories like that are just so cool that we see with a lot of our athletes.
How far do you go with those? You say regional, how do you define region? Like, are you going to Denver or Chicago, or how far is that stretch?
So like for our 8th grade and under for regional, we don't leave the state. They go to Omaha. That's the farthest that they go. And then for like our regional teams for high schoolers, we'll do one travel tournament. So like we'll go to either Des Moines or Sioux Falls. We do a winter season to try to cater to kids that are doing doing track. And then we do a spring season to cater to kids that are doing basketball. So, and in each of those seasons, we do one travel where it's like a 1-night hotel stay. And then we're so lucky. We're so spoiled. We have such good competition in Lincoln and Omaha and in the surrounding communities that we really don't have to do a lot of travel. So, and again, like I'm not a parent, but like, I know I hear it all the time. Parents are just in hotels and traveling and doing this stuff all the time, every weekend. And so it's like, for us, it's about creating options. There are some parents that want to do that and kids that want to be on the road and travel all over the country. And then there's parents that are like, hey, we just want to hopefully make our high school varsity team. And so there's room for both.
My kids are 6 and 4, and I have friends with kids just a little bit older than that who are in like the club baseball world. And I'm like already anxious about it, like what this could look like in 3 or 4 years when you're getting pulled in all these different directions. So maybe when that happens, I'll come back and talk to you again and be like, oh my God, how do we do this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough. And I think it's tough for parents, because I feel like you guys probably think like, man, I don't want to make the wrong decision. And I don't want I get that question all the time. I don't want my kid to be behind. And it's like, but behind who or what, it's just whatever their journey is, that's great, so.
How have you seen you've been doing this for a while now. How have you seen the club player evolve in your 10 years working with VCN?
Yeah, I mean, VCN itself has evolved. And so I think just seeing, college volleyball is completely different. And so even just that piece of it, it used to be, I don't want to say that it's not anymore, but it's become a lot more individualized, right? With NIL and the transfer portal and now rev sharing, and how's that going to all fit in? And so I think we've always tried to stress like team, and it's becoming hard because it is, you see those things happening in college. Why would that not trickle down to the high school and the club level? And so, it's just, we really try to just instill the same values and the same culture. And for me, like, I'm realistic about, these kids, and even saying this 5 years ago, like now it's even more, it's way less true, because now there's all these professional teams and opportunities. Like, it's so cool to see that these kids have opportunities to be involved in volleyball well beyond college, high school and college. And I mean, even when I started VCN, it was like, well, you either coach in college or you coach club. And so, I went the club route, but now it's like I have friends that are working for LOVB and working for these pro teams. And like, it's just so cool to see the growth of the sport and, and what opportunities there are professionally. But I always tell kids, like, the percentage of kids that go on to play college and professionally is very small. So it's, how do you prepare yourself for life after volleyball? So like, are you a good person? Do you How do you have great leadership capabilities? Are you able to respond well when you fail at something? Are you able to, pick yourself back up or deal with people you don't like or deal with challenging situations? And like for me, like trying to continue to stress those things to our kids, hopefully those lessons like won't change as we continue to go through this whole changing landscape of sports and volleyball and everything else. But like for me, I think that trying to keep that as a constant as these kids go through this whole experience, for me, that's the most important thing in my role, and having been on all sides of this now, to try to help our athletes.
Another question from one of our listeners, Bayamon, who I recognize as one of our I-80 Club subscribers, has another club question. As the father of two 15-year-old players, what's the most important yet most challenging thing for young players to work on and improve? And I assume that means a volleyball skill.
I was going to say volleyball or not.
Volleyball skill for them to work on and improve.
We always tell kids, if you can serve and pass, right? Again, maybe this kid's a setter or a middle or whatever, but we always tell kids, like, if you can do the fundamentals really, really well, you're going to be successful. And I think it's the most boring skills that there are, but they are the most important. And so we put a huge emphasis. Like, I think our teams are incredibly successful serving wise because we put a huge emphasis on serving. We stat serving. Some of our coaches use a radar gun, things like that. And I think that like the serve and pass game is the most important thing for young athletes. And then also just, I think what's really important that gets lost as kids get older. And if you come into our gym when like our 12s practice, they are all here 30 minutes early. There's no coaches around. They're all playing these silly little pickup games. There's no structure. They're doing cheers. They're doing like, and to me, like that is so important because that's how you learn to play the game. That's how you develop your IQ. You learn like the touch of the ball and how it moves and the angles. And so I think like just continuing, I think that's a fault of, I think a lot of clubs and just having the structure of sports is like letting them be unstructured as much as you can too, because that's where you love it and you have fun and you play with your friends and you ultimately are getting better, but you don't necessarily realize you're getting better in that moment. So,
yeah. You speak about the club origin too. I mean, you played for one of the original big time clubs, Sports Performance in Chicago, which Nebraska fans may also be familiar with. That's where Lexi Rodriguez, Taylor Landfair played for them too. I mean, how much of what you've done at VC Nebraska is modeled after Sports Performance?
A lot of it is modeled after Sports Performance. And I think I made a lot of mistakes early on trying to make it be like identical. And I quickly learned like Nebraska is not Chicago. Like it's completely different. I mean, growing up in Chicago, you were not allowed to play another sport. Like we practiced so much that you couldn't do any other sports. And so I think we had to adapt here and knew that like if we did that here, we were going to quickly fail. But I took a lot of the club structure from there as far as like lead coaching. So we have all of our teams are, in different age groups. And then we have a lead coach. So a full-time employee who's planning, implementing, and running all of that training. So whether you're on this team over here or this team over here, you're doing the same things. And I think that is really valuable in creating a structure and a unified organization where kids from 10 all the way to 18 are hearing the same words, learning the same skills. It's very much, a club. So it's not just, my coach is going to teach me this year, and then next year I'm going to learn something completely new. We really take the time to make sure that we're unified in what we're doing and why we're doing it. But I also think the life skills part, we were really, really challenged at Sports Performance to be super independent. We traveled to all of our tournaments with our team. I never once traveled to a single tournament with my parents. My parents never watched a single practice that I practiced in. The gym was completely closed. And I think for a lot of parents, it's like, whoa, but I learned so much independence and I learned how to communicate with my coaches, my teammates. It wasn't easy, but those were, I think, life skills that really, looking back, were incredibly beneficial growing up, going to college on my own, and then ultimately starting a business. Those were some of the things I definitely brought with me for sure.
Wow. Another one of the common, I would say one of the most common volleyball questions we get is like, what exactly is a 6'2"? And I feel like we have described that a little bit, but the question I think we'd put it to you is why, under what circumstances would a coach choose to run a 6'2"?
Yeah. So there's a number of different reasons. We at the club level try to run a 6-2 as much as we can from 8th grade and under, even freshmen and under. Having 2 setters obviously helps develop more athletes better, and it also gives more attacking opportunities. So if you're running a 6-2, the advantages are that you're always going to have 3 attackers in the front row. So in a 6-2, right, you have a setter in the back row and you have a right side in the front row. And then when that right side gets to the back row and the setter gets to the front row, you do a double sub. A new setter comes in the back row and a new hitter comes in the front row. Mm-hmm. So you always have 3 attackers in the front row. So that's a huge advantage. A disadvantage is if you have 2 setters with completely different tempos, location, styles, that can be really challenging. And usually also setters for the most part are going to be right a little bit more undersized than some of your outsides or your right sides. So now you have a smaller blocker blocking in the front row against most traditionally their best attackers on the other side. But the advantage of a 5-1 is you have a setter who can feel the flow. You know, I've done both. I've run a 5-1 and a 6-2 as a setter. A 5-1 is so much easier because you're just flowing. You're in the whole time. You know what your hitters need. You can kind of figure it out. Whereas a 6-2, it's like you're in and then you get in a rhythm and then you're out and then you stand there for 3 rotations and then you're back in and then it's a lot harder from the setting perspective in a 6-2. But, you know, depending on the coach and the style, there's positives and negatives to both. And I think you don't see it a lot in the college game because it is so hard to find 2 setters with similar tempo and connection with their attackers that it just makes it really, really hard. So you don't see it a lot.
Have you ever messed around with a 5-2? And yeah. Is that where you basically you have one setter set in the front row and then another setter set in the back row? And maybe that could work if you had a taller setter that you wouldn't sacrifice the size for, and then maybe one that's a little bit shorter.
Yeah, we do that on a couple of our teams. We have kids that do that for that exact reason. We've got a little bit taller setter and then, you know, a shorter setter who maybe is better defensively, who can do better in the back row. We've definitely done that on some of our teams.
Is that, I mean, it sounds like it's a great developmental tool, especially when they're younger, you learn more skills and get a chance to play. I mean, sometimes your setter will play opposite in the front row. I mean, is at the college level, is it more dependent on the setters you have on the roster or the attackers? I mean, what drives that decision more?
I would say it's more reliant on the setters. You know, like I've seen programs where you have enough attackers, but if this, like from the coaching perspective, I would never sacrifice the success of my offense just because I have other good attackers. You know what I mean? So I feel like usually it's on the setting side. If you feel like, hey, I can't find 2 setter. It's just not going to work as well having 2 setters out there just because I have 2 really good right sides.
Yeah.
But again, that's the cool thing about volleyball is like everyone has their own flavor and their own style, and it's fun to see. I don't know if you guys remember in 2005, we ran a completely crazy 6-2 that I don't know that I've ever seen anyone else do similarly. So we had the setters actually in the middle subbed for each other. Mm-hmm. Remember, we had 4 stud outsides. We had Sarah Pavin, Christina Hoteling, Jen Saliamua, and Danny Mancuso. Mm-hmm. And then we had Melissa Elmer and Tracy Stalls. And so John wanted to keep Sarah Pavin in all the way around, which why would you not? And so we subbed in for the middles, and it was this crazy offense that worked. Like in that scenario, it was not because of Danny and I. It was because of, you know, we had 2.
Did you still come in when it was the middle's turn to serve? So you
yes.
always make that transition when they go to the rotation one or the back row?
Yes. It was the funkiest offense I've ever done. And we actually had a club team here that tried to do it this year because we have a really good lefty right side. And it's the rotations are really crazy. They used to get called out of rotation even though they were in rotation. It's pretty wild. So that's where like you just got to find what works for your personnel. But
I think the only other time I remember Pettit talked about that too. With one of his last teams did that too, where you got a good a lefty or an opposite that you want to keep in, and the middles are that. So it's it's different. It's different. Speaking of that kind of, I mean, figuring out where people play. I mean, when you're looking at a young person, what are the biggest factors in deciding where they're going to play? And then secondly, what kind of age do ideally will a player settle into a position?
Yeah, I mean, So something that we always tell kids, like from our volleyball perspective and what we see, right? So if we see a kid who like, we think you should be a setter, usually setters, we're looking obviously at the physical attributes, but we're looking at leadership. Do they want to be in the gym extra? How do they communicate well with others? How do they take feedback? Like the setting position is so intricate and there's so many things that have to line up for it to be successful. So for a lot of it, for the setting position, it's those things. But if I go to a kid and say, hey, I think you are going to be a phenomenal setter. This is where we want to put you. This is where we see you. And they hate setting, like it will never be successul. Mm-hmm. And we've tried to do that. We've tried to like force kids into positions that we felt like based on our knowledge and expertise, they would be phenomenal in these positions. And if they don't love what they're doing, they're never going to be passionate about it. And so I think part of it is like finding that connection of like, what are they passionate about and what do they find the most joy playing? But then obviously trying to develop their skills. You know, Becca Alec played here and she, you know, growing up, we had her play every position. She played all the way around. She served, she played outside. She struggled a lot in a lot of those positions, but I think it helped her become a very well-rounded player and see the game in a lot of different ways. And so I think the specialization thing for me is really tough because there's some kids where you see that potential and you're like, man, this kid could be really good in this position. But you also don't want to pigeonhole kids too early because what if they grow? What if they develop? What if, you know, we don't want them to only know how to do one or two skills. And so there's a number of different things based on the position that we look for. But liberos too, you know, serving and passing and digging is kind of boring. So like you have to have kids who love to be in the gym and doing those extra reps every single day before practice, because that's how you get great at that position. And so it's kind of a balance between the two.
Yeah, and we've seen a number of liberos come through Nebraska's program in the last 10 years that played other positions at their club level. Like Justine Wong-Orantes was a setter, and I think Kenzie Knuckles and maybe even Kenzie Maloney were outsides on their club teams as well. And just seeing someone start their club and high school career as a libero, and that's what they're going to play in college, I feel like is kind of a new thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's becoming less and less, you know, I think because club volleyball is just like blown up and it's become so popular, it's becoming so much more cutthroat and competitive. It's probably going to happen less and less, but like I loved seeing our kids play a certain position in club and then go to their high school and play something completely different. I think that's great. I played middle for 3 years in high school. Like it was what we needed. So I was the tallest kid and I was a middle. So I think there's value in learning other positions and like seeing the game from a different perspective. So.
Another question that I feel like we get a lot is a lot of people assume that it's pretty easy or that all pin hitters are interchangeable and that it's easy to switch someone from a left side to an opposite. But I mean, is it easy to do that, or what goes into kind of the differences between playing on the left and playing on the right?
Yeah. So if you picture, like, if I'm right-handed and the ball is traveling to me, like, and I'm right-handed, my elbow's back, that ball coming at me. That's why we have so many left-handed right sides versus like on the opposite, on the right side, it's so much easier. That ball is just right. I can, if the ball's set inside, I can get my feet to the ball. If you're right-handed playing on the right side and that ball is underset, that ball has to travel over your shoulder and then to be able to make contact. And so that is really challenging. And also your blocking footwork is completely backwards. So if you're blocking on the left side, that's the natural same footwork pattern that you use when you attack, which would be left, right, left. If you're blocking on the right side, you're basically doing backwards footwork. So you're doing right, left, right, which would be considered goofy footed for a right-handed player. And so like we have a kid on our 16s team who was playing outside, moved her to the right. And it took her 4 months to figure out her footwork on the right side because she was doing it backwards. So it's completely different, different footwork. The footwork patterns are the same, but like where you're taking your approach from, where you're starting from, it's a completely different feel to go from left to right.
Yeah. Question actually came from my mother, who listens and reads and tries to keep up, but sometimes the lingo gets her. She was trying to understand the jousting when there's two players that are going for a ball at the net too. Is that a skill that you try to teach and how do you win a joust and how do you go about teaching that?
Yeah, I mean, we like always try to like throw it into like scrimmages or fun stuff. Like we would have like jousting competitions. I remember doing it at practice at sports forums all the time. Like before practice, we would have jousting competitions, or we did it at Nebraska camp too. But I would say like people are always like, setters always win. And it's like, well, setters usually are pretty smart, but usually like the trick is you have to touch the ball second. Mm-hmm. So usually middles, right? Like they see the ball, their job is they got to throw it down. Whereas setters, if you touch the ball second, you usually have like you just have a better touch where you're able to kind of touch it and push. That's the best way I can explain it. I don't know. It's one of those things like you just do it over and over and over and you get the right feel for it. But
yeah, it creates the resistance off the middle's hands if you touch it second.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my best key if your mom's ever in a jousting competition. So
jousting days are past her now. So.
Maggie, we have a couple more questions left with you from our listeners and subscribers, and we've talked a little bit about this already, about specialization and when is the right time to specialize. But John SP asks us, how would you respond to the critique that the club system and the American college system forces players to specialize too early and not develop parts of their game, which is then exposed at the professional and the international level who are subs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's really hard, and it's a double-edged sword because like for a long time we promoted we don't want to specialize until freshman, sophomore year, and then but again, what we're finding is that if you wait too long to specialize, then sometimes that competition level is so high. And there's certain positions where I think it just depends on the position. So like the setter position, starting that position late is really hard because there's so much about the game to learn. But like we were just talking about, libero, outside versus libero, like that's a much easier transition because it's serving, passing, right? It's serving, passing, defense if you're a libero. And if you're an outside, you're already doing those things. And so I think for us, like what we do with a lot of our young kids is we do like quasi specialization. So we'll have kids that will either do setting or attacking. So they'll be doing one or the other. So for example, when they're in the back row, they'll set. When they get to the front row, they'll hit, but they'll hit left front, middle front, right front. So they're not playing middle. They're just attacking all the way through the front row. And we sacrifice success, right? Like we don't really care about winning at those ages. It's about developing. But then at least they can kind of get a feel for the game as they kind of grow through the system. So it's definitely a really fine line. And the hard thing is like, again, like these college coaches are recruiting kids at their sophomore year. So it's this constant balance of like, our job as a club and as a staff is always to tell the truth. So if a kid comes to us and says, I want to play at Nebraska, well, then I'm going to say, well, here are all the things that you need to do to even have a chance, right? And it's, most people don't want to hear what those things are, right? Because it's really hard. It's really hard to even have a tiny little chance. And so I think it's just trying to constantly be honest with the kids about what their goals are, what they want to do, and then what that takes ultimately, because very few people really have a good feeling of what that does take to play at a certain level collegiately. And then you throw in the thousands of other kids that also want the same things you want, right? So I think it's a balance. I think when they're young, teaching them the game, the most important thing is teaching the game the right way and making sure they're having fun. Like if they don't enjoy playing, like what's the point, right? They're going to be miserable. So hopefully that answers your question.
Oh yeah, that was great. Another question from Caitlin. I mean, do you think that you talked a little bit about how there's a lot more pro opportunities? Some, especially Love, has a connection to club teams. They try to they talk about kind of the grassroots to the professional levels. I mean, do you think that club ball, the pro pipeline, is going to be more commonplace like it is with Love? And then I don't know if you've had any conversations with professional leagues too about working with them, partnerships with them, but what are your thoughts on kind of that vertical integration?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've been approached by multiple different organizations about working together, and some of it is professional stuff, some of it's other stuff. And, I played in Europe and I worked with those kids, and I completely see that connection from, we had a lot of players on our team who grew up through that youth program, but they don't have collegiate programs like we have in the US. So that's where there's going to be, playing for a club that's an LOVB club isn't going to guarantee that a kid's going to go to that team, because so much of that's dependent on where they go to college, how they develop, what their coach is like. Does their coach have connections, right? Like a lot of our, we have kids who when Becca was being recruited, she said, I want to have the best absolute chance of playing in the Olympics and playing professionally. And it was like, okay, well then here are my recommendations of where the pipeline is, right? And that's the reality. And so, you know, I'll be super curious to see how it all translates, you know, and I am all for professional volleyball in the United States. And right now there's a couple different models that are happening. And I'm just like, please let one of them survive, because it's like, it's come and gone. And I mean, I remember when I was a kid, maybe in high school, there was a pro league that had like 4 teams and it lasted for 1 or 2 years. So it's like, I just hope we can find a system that is sustainable, that lasts, because these kids deserve to have that opportunity. And, you know, to only have the opportunity to go over to Europe or Puerto Rico or wherever to go play, you know, like that's super cool. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. But I think would I have loved to have the opportunity to play in front of my family in the US? Like that would have been incredible. So I don't know. I'll be super curious to see how it develops and what it looks like. And I'm just in full support of professional volleyball in the US. I think it's great. So however we can make it work.
We're wrapping up here with Maggie. Maggie, we know you have to run pretty soon, and we don't want to keep you past your time. But what we've been asking a lot of people lately with John Cook's retirement earlier this spring is if you have a favorite John Cook memory or story you would like to share with us.
Oh, man.
One maybe that would be appropriate for youthful ears if people are listening to this with their kids, if that helps narrow it down at all.
Oh gosh, John. Gosh, I'm trying to think. There's so many good ones. I'll never forget. I think it was my junior year, and we were practicing literally on Thanksgiving. So it was Thanksgiving Day, and John had this way about coaching, but like instead of like, it was just like he would coach you through somebody else, or like through a sarcastic comment, or like, you know, and you just kind of like got used to it. And I'll never forget, like it was Thanksgiving Day, and I think we were actually staying at that point. I had to stay at the Embassy Suites because the dorms were closed. So it's like we're staying in the dorm, or we're staying at this hotel. It's Thanksgiving, favorite holiday. Like we're practicing, like, and I just had a terrible practice. I was just practicing bad. And he was just on me. He was just like on me the whole time. Right. And I just remember he threw his hands up. He was like, Griffin, what the heck do you think this is, a holiday? And I just literally turned to my teammates. And I don't know. It was just hysterical. The way he said it, like the way, like, it was just how he coached. It was just so funny. And I'm just like,
maybe John only observed Canadian Thanksgiving, which I think is in October.
Yes.
And it was his humor, like he just, you know, that was just very John. So I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that.
And you also, when you played with Danny when she was here as a player too, I mean, are you surprised that she's now the head coach from what you remember about her as a player? Are you surprised that she's back the head coach of Nebraska volleyball?
Not surprised at all. I mean, she's so great. Like just seeing her over the years, like how she connects with her kids and like the way she recruits and her staff, and you can just tell like it's hard. Like coaching is hard. Coaching young women is hard. And so you have to be able to be tough on them and build relationships and build skill. And like, she does it in a way that's just, it seems very like natural for her. And so I had no doubt that she would be the next head coach here. And so I'm excited. I think it's just going to be a whole different era of like what the girls and the vibe and the culture is all about. And I just think it's really, really cool to see her back here, and obviously Lane. And it's just, I'm really happy for her. I think it's a whole new era of Nebraska volleyball, and it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see what she does.
You bet. You bet. Well, Maggie, that's all the questions we have for you. We appreciate your time. Maggie Griffin is the president and founder of Volleyball Club, or VC Nebraska. Thanks for sharing your insights, your wisdom, and all your volleyball knowledge with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks again to Maggie Griffin of Volleyball or VC Nebraska. I keep wanting to spell it out. It's a Volleyball Club Nebraska, but it is VC Nebraska, and it is a volleyball club. So we're all right in this instance. Also, I thought the questions were great. Like we have a listener base that is really educated about the sport of volleyball. And obviously by some of the questions, some of your families are involved in the club. Maybe you have kids playing or approaching the age where they're going to play. So like never hesitate to reach out to us with those questions. And if we can't answer them, we're happy to pass them along to great experts like Maggie who can maybe get you the answers that you're looking for.
Yes. Yeah, we have great guests. I do want to clear one thing of our great guests too. I think on our last free episode, I said that Volleyball Nations League was happening in Czechia. I was wrong. Wrong C European country. Croatia is where that was happening. So.
Yeah, they played the Czech Republic or Czechia, but it was in Croatia.
So I just want to get that on the record.
I didn't catch that either.
It's been bothering me since we recorded that. So I want to get that on the recorded airwaves.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, some news that came out on Monday of this week, and we're not entirely sure when you're going to hear this, so maybe it was the week before you're listening to this episode.
It was on June 30th is when it's dropped.
There you go. Let's use dates. Good idea. It came out, the national volleyball television schedule was released, and we found out that Nebraska is going to play 5 games on some of the legacy media channels this fall, which is more than they ever have before. And I would imagine that the 2025 season is going to have more games on national TV than any year ever, because we're seeing more ESPN, more ABC, more Fox broadcasting volleyball. But Nebraska is going to play 5 matches on either Fox, ESPN, NBC, or ABC. And that's before the Big Ten Network or the BTN Plus or the Nebraska Public Media schedule has been released. So you're going to have plenty of opportunities, no matter where you live in the country, to watch Nebraska this fall, which I think is great for the sport of women's college volleyball.
Yeah, I think they've learned over the past couple of years. So they've broadcasted the national title match, have been on ABC, and they've really kind of seen numbers skyrocket. And they've done a few different things of like having the game on Fox lead into an NFL broadcast or the other way around. And NBC's also added a window, I think Saturday afternoons, late afternoons, that they've done that. So we'll get to see. And plus, before football starts, I think some of these sports realize that volleyball makes great television. So we'll see that. August 22nd, Nebraska will start their match, their season against Pitt, 6 p.m. here in Lincoln at the AVCA First Serve Showcase. That'll be on Fox. Afterwards, Stanford and Florida will play. So it'll be a great way to kick off. So both those on Fox. It's weird that I think there's 4 days of matches that each different day is going to be on different television. The Saturday matches are going to be on FS1. And then on Sunday, August 24th, Nebraska and Stanford will play on ESPN. And then the Monday's matches will be up at the Pentagon in Sioux Falls. Those will be on Big Ten Network. But Nebraska will kick off on Fox and ESPN.
Yeah, so you're going to have to click around just a little bit. The next week, Nebraska is going to go down to Nashville to play in the Broadway Block Party against Kentucky. That game is going to be on ABC. So we've got those 3 channels covered now. Then you have to go all the way to October 3rd. Nebraska's match at Penn State is going to be on Fox. And then finally on November 8th, Nebraska is going to play Minnesota. And what we believe right now, Lincoln, that's going to be on NBC.
Yeah, there was a reporter up in Minnesota who said that they saw a glimpse of the schedule and saw that was going to be scheduled for NBC. That hasn't been publicly announced as of when we're recording this too, but I mean, it matched what NBC did last year too. They had 3 or 4 different Saturday afternoon games too, and Nebraska and Minnesota figured to be 2 of the better teams in the conference too. And that Penn State match, that's going to be a Friday night affair too. So Friday night on Fox. I'm excited for that.
And you have to imagine, too, that Nebraska is going to get a large number of their matches on either Big Ten Network or BTN Plus. And then what they don't pick up, Nebraska Public Media is going to be throw their hat in the ring for a couple matches, too. The other thing I didn't put down here in the notes, but Nebraska's 2, we'll call them preseason exhibitions, the alumni match and the red-white scrimmage, which is going to be in early and mid-August. In Nebraska's announcement about this television schedule, they said TV plans for those matches is still forthcoming. I would have to imagine, this is a total guess, I'm not sourcing on this, that both of those matches will be available somehow, whether they're on Big Ten Network, Big Ten BTN Plus, or Nebraska Public Media. I would imagine people have the chance to watch those too.
And usually what you see is whenever a Nebraska Public Media carries a match, it'll be simulcast on BTN Plus. So that way people outside of the state can see as well too, because they can't otherwise see that. So yeah, we'll probably find out when all of the matches are available, what's going to be on BTN, what's been relegated to BTN Plus, and end of the month. I think those usually come out that Monday of the Big Ten Media Days, and those are scheduled for July 28th and 29th. That's when they kind of say, oh, look at our record number of games that'll be on BTN and broadcast network. So we'll probably get the full schedule, TV schedule at the end of the month too. So you can start making your travel plans, where you want to go to road trip to, and also just your weekend TV watching plans, when you want to catch Nebraska volleyball on TV.
And you're going to be in Chicago for Big Ten Media Days. Is that right? We got to figure out what's like the ideal live place for you to do a show from in Chicago. And I'm not just talking about like wherever the Rosemont, Hilton, or wherever this.
We do it at the BTN Studios is where we do it. We're in there.
You never know who's going to drop by there.
Well, I'll see if I can get our good friend Emily Eman to join me for.
You just grab Dave Revson as he walks by and.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Dave, come here, Lincoln. Nice to meet you. You want to be on this podcast?
They have Larry Putney who does matches for BTN and Nebraska Public Media. He kind of MCs the whole media days too. So we'll get Larry.
Yeah. I think Larry Putney's the only guest we've had on where I couldn't be part of the interview. Like I had a schedule conflict or something, and you did it.
He was traveling.
Yeah,
it was maybe the only one that interrupted by room service as well too.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'd love to have Larry on. We'd love to have Emily on. Like, we're going to have opportunities aplenty coming up this fall for more guests and more great content. Like we said at the top of the show, conference previews are coming up in July. I don't think we're going to spend an entire episode on each conference. I think we want to do something on the Big Ten for sure, and then maybe combine like ACC, SEC, Big 12 into another show, just because like we're counting the days now until this season starts, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're grateful that you're going to be part of it with us.
Yeah, and we'll probably also do a special in the volleyball state. We'll look at the other programs around Nebraska as well too. So there's a lot of preview stuff coming up. So it's going to be busy. It's a great time to join this community as well too. So best way to do that, sign up for Patreon, which you already are. So we appreciate you. Tell your friends.
Spread the word.
Patreon.
Tell your friends, tell your mom, like Lincoln solicits questions from his mom for this show.
She asked me all the questions, so I got to make sure I got to take care of her and get all of her volleyball questions answered, because I got birthday coming up. So,
Mm-hmm. You can interact with us for free on social media as well. You can follow the show at Volleyball Pod on Twitter and Blue Sky. We post video clips of the show on there and always let you know when a new episode's dropping. You can submit questions to us or comments or feedback or tirades if you want. We've gotten one or two of those by emailing us at volleyballstate@gmail.com. And then you can find me individually on Twitter and Blue Sky at @JeffSheldon.
Yep. And I'm on Twitter at Lincoln_VB. I'm also on Threads and Blue Sky, wherever. I try to get as many people out of social media as possible. But that's all we got for today. So thank you for listening, and thank you for living in the volleyball state.